हरे कृष्ण। नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा. So welcome you back again to day 2 of part 3 of this course, self-evaluation tools on the path of bhakti. So we have been discussing from this book Madhurya Kadambini for the last many days, and hopefully you have had a fruitful journey till now. And we are currently discussing the Tritiya Amrita Vrishti, the third chapter of this book, which is discussing on the theme of Anartha Nivritti. And in this theme of Anartha Nivritti, we have been discussing that unwanted desires are of 4 types: Dushkritotta Anartha, Sukritotta Anartha, Bhaktiotta Anartha, and Aparadotta Anarthas. In this, we have already discussed Dushkritotta Anarthas and Sukritotta Anarthas, and we are currently discussing Aparadotta Anarthas, unwanted desires which are born due to committing the 10 types of Nama Aparad. So in that we have already discussed the first 2 Nama Aparads, offense to the holy name, which is criticism of a Vaishnava, and second, the misunderstanding the position of the demigods and giving equal or more respect to the demigods than Lord Vishnu, or to consider the demigods to be independently functional of Lord Vishnu. So this was the second offense which we have already seen. Yesterday we started discussing the third offense, which is criticism of scripture. Actually, that is the fourth offense. The third offense is Guror Avagya, disobeying the orders of a spiritual master. That is, that offense is not elaborately discussed in Madhurya Kadambini. It only chooses 3 sample offenses and discusses them in little detail. So this is the third offense, which we started yesterday. We will complete today and then move further. So, criticism of scriptures, Shruti Shastra Nanda. Yesterday, I will do a very quick recap of what we have seen. We saw that how people could take extreme stances if they don't have the right understanding. One extreme stance is, except for Bhakti Shastras, all other Shastras, Jnana Shastras, Karma Shastras, Yoga Shastras are all bogus. So such an understanding is certainly an extremistic understanding. It is not right, and such an understanding is born out of a kind of false ego that what I am doing is the best, rest everything is bogus. Actually, the Karma Shastras, Jnana Shastras and Yoga Shastras are also very much part of the Vedic gamut, and all these literatures come from the breathing of the Supreme Lord. They are all eternal. They are all apaurusheya, they are not all man-made. So these literatures are there in the Vedic scriptures. So therefore, one should not criticize them. As we saw, every literature is according to one's adhikar. If one has karma adhikar, the karma shastras are meant for him. If one has jnana adhikar, the jnana shastras are meant for him. And if one has bhakti adhikar, the bhakti shastras are meant for him. So one who has bhakti adhikar should neither criticize those who have jnana adhikar or those who study the jnana shastras, or those who have karma adhikar and those who study the karma shastras, or those who have yoga adhikar and those who study the yoga shastras. If one does that, then one is directly criticizing the intelligence of the Supreme Lord for having created these other scriptures. So therefore, that is one extreme understanding. The other extreme understanding is that all scriptures are meant for me to be followed. That is not the right understanding. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Yavan artha udapane sarvatah samplutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanatah. This verse comes in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. It has many meanings. One of the meanings that is given is Yavan artha udapane. sarvatah samplutodake. So when there is a huge body of water, like a river, even though the river is flowing and the river water is meant for your use, there is no doubt about it. Anyone can use the river water, no one can be stopped from using the river water. But that does not mean that the river is flowing just for you. The river is not flowing just for you, the river is flowing for everyone. If you need a few buckets of water, you can take a few buckets of water from the river and leave the rest for other people to use. In the same way, the whole gamut of Vedic literatures are there. They are there for utility of many different categories of people. You accept only what is meant for you, Arjuna. Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. The Vedic scriptures even talk about performing one's prescribed duties because that is your adhikar. You accept only that part of the Shastras. If you have Bhakti adhikar, you accept the Bhakti Shastras. So in the same way, as all water of the river is not meant for your utility, you don't need that much water also. You take what you need and leave the rest for others. And don't pollute the rest of the river just because you have taken your part. So in the same way, if you have Bhakti adhikar, you accept the Bhakti Shastras, don't criticize the Karma Shastras, Jnana Shastras and Yoga Shastras, because that is meant for people with that kind of qualification. So this is Shruti Shastra Ninda. So in this theme, we discussed that how of the three kinds of pramanas, Pratyaksha Praman, Anumana Praman and Shabda Praman, Shabda Praman is superior because of the absence of these four kinds of defects. Karana Patava, Brahma, Vipralipsa and Pramada. So these four defects are not present in the Shastras which come in the preceptorial lineage or the Parampara system, because it is coming directly from the Lord and without any distortion. If it is passed on to the next disciple, then it is considered to be free from the four defects, because Krishna's words, Krishna is beyond four defects and his words are also beyond the four defects. And the contents of the scriptures which we saw yesterday, it has 9 essential principles, 3 about the Supreme Lord, 3 about the Jiva, 1 about how the Lord has an Achinta Bhedabhed relationship with his energies, which includes the Jivas and the material energy. And 8th is, these 7 principles talk about the Sambandha Gyan. What is the connection between the Jiva and the Supreme Lord and Prakriti, and between Jiva and Prakriti. This understanding is the Sambandha Gyan. And the Abhideya, the means of attaining one's goal or perfection, is Shuddha Bhakti. And the Prayojan is Prema. So in essence, these are the essential conclusions of the scriptures, but some of them are very secret. It is not very clearly mentioned because not everyone may be qualified to understand this particular knowledge. So when one comes to the highest qualification of bhakti, then he will be able to understand these essential principles. But for those who have not reached that stage of being qualified for bhakti, for them, they see their goal as Swarga, they see their goal as Moksha, they see their goal as merging in the impersonal Brahma Jyoti, or acquiring some mystic siddhis. These are all goals considered by a person who does not have the ultimate understanding of what is the real goal of life. Etavan Sankhya Yogabhyam Swadharma Parinishtaya Janmalabha Parapumsam Ante Narayana Smriti. We saw this yesterday. So, when one understands that the ultimate goal of life is to establish a relationship with Krishna, then he puts a full stop to all this karma, jnana, yoga business and then takes up to the practice of pure devotional service. And that is the conclusion of the scriptures. But that conclusion is hidden from the eyes of those people who may not have qualification for that. So only those who have qualification will see. And for Krishna to create such a literature is not difficult. Like I remember just recently, one of my friends, he called me. When I was in the ashram, he said, Prabhuji, just come here. Then he showed me his phone, smartphone, and he said, he showed me a picture and he said, what do you see? I said, I just see some dots. And he said, what colored dots? I said, red and white. And he said, are you sure you are seeing red and white? And I said, yes, absolutely. Then he called another person and he said, Prabhu, what do you see? He said, I am seeing dots. What colored dots? He said, green and yellow. And then I was shocked. And then he called the third person and he said, red and white. Fourth person, he said, red and white. Fifth person, green and yellow. So there were few people who are seeing green and yellow, few people who are seeing red and white. And then he said, look, you may think that I am doing some trick. Now all of you together watch this picture and you tell me what colors you see. Few of them said red and white, few of them said green and yellow. And it was real. It was not just a trick that he was playing. And then the explanation that was given was, this is a kind of combination. The picture is made in such a way that those who are left-brained, predominantly left-brained, the analytical thinkers, they will see a particular combination of colors, and those who are right-brained, who are little bit more on the sentimental side, they see a different combination of colors. This was the explanation. Whatever may be the reason, but the fact was two different people were seeing the same figure. They were seeing two different colors. This is real. If a human being is capable of creating a particular image where two people can see two different things, why can't the Supreme Lord create literatures in such a way that people with karma adhikar get attracted to the karma section of the Vedas, people with jnana adhikar get attracted to the jnana section of the Vedas, people with yoga adhikar get attracted to the yoga section of the Vedas, and people with bhakti adhikar get attracted to the bhakti section of the Vedas. So this is natural, and Krishna has perfectly created the scriptures in such a way. So this is Sambandha, Abhideya and Prayojan. This is the contents of the scriptures. But ultimately the scriptures glorify the process of bhakti and the holy name. And also he says, the next theme that we saw was, one of the main reasons why people criticize the scriptures is when they get in touch with the 6 systems of philosophy or other such bogus literatures. Actually, if we analyze these 10 offenses to the holy name, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has elaborately described it in many literatures, including his commentary on the Sikshashtakam and in his books like Harinam Chintamani. And in many other literatures, the 10 offenses are described in detail, elaborated. If you see, almost 8 to 9 of those 10 offenses are attributed to non-Krishna conscious association, Asatsanga. Asatsanga is the cause. So when we associate with various different kinds of philosophies, if we are indiscriminate in hearing from any person, you go to YouTube and anyone who is giving a pravachan, you click and hear, and if it is not proper parampara presentation, it can contaminate our thought process. It can contaminate our value system. And then slowly, you are hearing from this organization, this organization, this organization, and they may be speaking very lucidly, presenting concepts in a very simple way, in a very understandable way, with lot of nice stories and all that. But then slowly it will contaminate our heart, and when we read our own books, when we hear our own people speaking, then we will start judging what they are speaking based on what we have heard from these other people. Therefore, can you believe 9 out of 10 offenses have their root in indiscriminate hearing and association? That is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so heavy. Mayavada Bhashya Shunile Hai Sarvanash, he says. If you want to just dig a grave to your creeper of bhakti, you start hearing from others. So therefore we should be very, very careful, and it is better to be conservative in this front. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was extremely conservative. So even to a personal associate, Mukunda, he was so heavy. So Mukunda, at least during his early days, he used to, wherever Krishna Katha is happening, he would go. And sometimes it may happen that by chance he may go into a place where a Mayavadi is speaking Katha. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu observed it once or twice, and he was very severe on Mukunda. So during the Mahaprakash Leela, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was performing Mahaprakash Leela, he gave darshan to everyone, and Mukunda was one of his closest associates. And he did not call Mukunda at all. So every one of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's close associates became very concerned. Why did Mahaprabhu not call Mukunda? So then they told Mahaprabhu, your dear associate Mukunda, why don't you call him and give him your darshan? He said, no, I will never give him darshan, because that rascal, he is so indiscriminate. First, whenever Krishna Katha is happening, he comes, hears Krishna Katha, and by such a hearing and appreciation, he puts flower garlands on me, and after some days or after some time, he goes to hear some Mayavadi, and in hearing that Mayavad Katha, he takes a big stick and beats me on my back. So for the next 10,000 years, I will not give him, 10,000 lifetimes, I will not give him any darshan. But Mukunda was such a simple person. He was not getting affected by hearing that Mayavad Katha. He was a pure devotee of the Lord. And his purity and his affection for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was seen in his response. As soon as he heard that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would give him darshan after 10,000 lifetimes, he started jumping and dancing. I will get to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu after 10,000 lifetimes. So he had so much affection and faith in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very strict. Through Mukunda, he was teaching a very valuable lesson. Don't be indiscriminate in hearing and watching and reading from anything that is not connected to our Guru Sishya Parampara. It can contaminate our heart in very subtle ways, and the result of such a contamination would be we will start seeing and we will start judging devotees based on this newfound value system. It includes all kinds of hearing from other societies, reading books which are maybe modern self-help books and modern psychology books. It is good for getting a degree, but we cannot start evaluating devotees based on these kinds of value systems. So we have to be very careful. So when we start judging our own, sometimes we start judging our own literatures because of having access to, because we may be hearing from other sources also. And that's exactly what here Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is mentioning, that the criticism of Vedas comes due to connecting oneself with these different kinds of philosophies by Charvak and Jaimini and all that. So we may say, oh, I don't read Charvak philosophy, but there are modern versions of many Charvak, many Mayavad, many such philosophies are available. It may not come in the form of Shariraka Bhashya, a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra by Shankaracharya, but it comes in many different modern forms, and it will subtly inject the poison of non-Krishna conscious philosophy, and immediately when that poison starts acting, gradually we will start criticizing our scriptures, we will start finding faults in the devotees, we will start finding faults with the guru, and it will completely uproot our creeper of bhakti. So therefore we should be very careful, and this is something that we saw yesterday, effect of the 6 systems of philosophy or any non-Krishna conscious philosophy. And then the next theme that we saw was the scriptures actually glorify the holy name. If you see, the purport is this: since the Vedas are teaching chanting of the pure name as the principal process, to criticize the Vedas is to criticize the name. That is offensive. Therefore, those who take shelter of the holy name should be very careful never to criticize any part of the scripture. Even the Karmakandiya parts we should not be criticizing. We should see them as perfectly applicable to a particular class of people. So this is where we ended yesterday, and today we will see what is the result of criticizing the scriptures. So he says that it is unfortunate that in this Kali Yuga, even so-called great personalities avoid the supreme personality of Krishna and his nectarian name, and instead worship the illusory potency of the Lord Maya Devi. So by taking shelter, why do they do that? They take shelter of the tamasic tantra, some very tamasic shastras, and they start criticizing the Vedic shastras. And such people, they indulge in all sorts of unmentionable activities like meat eating, intoxication, like that, and therefore they do not feel inspired to take shelter of Krishna in Vrindavan. And Maya Devi, she just keeps these people happy by giving them some worldly happiness, and or punishes them according to their nefarious activities. But such people never take up to the shelter of Krishna's lotus feet because of these kind of taking shelter of the wrong shastras. So, but if one worships Krishna and chants his holy name, she helps him to overcome samsara. Like that. So in this way, he talks about the result of criticizing the scriptures is one does not escape the realm of karma. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jatare shayanam. Iha samsare bahudustare. Very difficult for such a person to escape this result, this cycle of birth and death. Kripaya pare pahi murare. Only Murari can help that person come out. For that he has to take shelter of Murari. Taking shelter of Murari means taking shelter of the holy names of Murari. Therefore he says, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam, Bhaja Mudamate. So he has to take shelter of Murari, he has to take shelter of Murari's holy names, and he has to take shelter of those scriptures which have been presented by Murari. So therefore, if such an offense has been committed, how do you rectify this offense? The Shastras say, if by misfortune or accident it happens that one commits this Shruti Shastra Ninda, first step, as we saw in the Vaishnava Ninda, one should be extremely repentant. One should be repentant and immediately offer respects to the scriptures. And how do we offer respects? One should offer some flowers and tulsi leaves to the Bhagavatam and the Vedas immediately and worship them. Krishne swadamopagate dharmagyanadibhissaha kalau nashtadrishamesha purana arko adhuna uditaha. Bhagavatam says. What is this Bhagavatam? Krishne swadamopagate. After Krishna left to his abode after performing his pastimes in this material world, Dharmagyanadibhissaha, along with Dharmagyana etc., he went to his abode. Kalau nashtadrisham. in this age of Kali, everyone became blind because Krishna has left. Purana Arko Aduna Uditaha. The son of Bhagavatam has come to give eyes to those who have become blinded by this age of Kali, and also because of the disappearance of the son of Krishna. When the son of Krishna disappeared, the son of Bhagavatam rose. So therefore it is non-different from Krishna. So, being the essence of the Vedas and an incarnation of Krishna, the Srimad Bhagavatam will give unlimited mercy. One should praise the same scriptures as well as the practitioners of those scriptures. So with the same mouth with which they criticize the Karma Shastras and the Karmis or the Karma Yogis, or the Jnana Shastras and the Jnana Yogis, with that same mouth one should praise them. And one should understand the subject properly from a knowledgeable devotee. So therefore we should not go and ask Google Acharya, oh, teach me. If we ask such non-bona fide sources, then we will be misguided. We should approach a devotee. We should approach a devotee and then ask for the proper understanding. So yesterday I was speaking with one of my friends. He stays in the United States and he calls me almost every day. And yesterday he was sharing with me and we discussed some Krishna Katha for some 10-15 minutes every day. And he asked some questions, whatever he has, and I share whatever I know. And he told me one very important point which struck me very nicely. Prabhuji, do you know why I call you every day? There are many reasons. I feel there are many reasons, but one very important reason is that I want to set the right example for my two children. That if you ever get any question in your life about how to live a life or some questions from the Shastras, you should learn to approach a devotee and ask. He said, Prabhuji, I don't want them to go and ask Google answers for all these questions. So that's why subtly, especially those days when I have particular questions, I ensure that my kids are around so that they see that when I get a question, I ask a devotee. So that when they get a question, they should learn to approach a devotee. And then he told, Prabhuji, tomorrow please block your time. My elder son has a question. So he said he will ask you tomorrow. I said, yes. So this is perfection. So therefore, one should approach a devotee to learn the right Siddhanta. So in this day and age of social media, we are exposing ourselves to be severely corrupted. Our consciousness can become corrupted very, very soon because anyone can post whatever he wants. In early days, to publish a book was a great thing. But in today's day and age, anyone can publish whatever he wants. If someone publishes a book, means he has invested at least 15-20 years of his life in working on that. And it is reviewed with so much care, edited with so much care, and then when it comes out, it is a life-transforming book. But in today's day and age, you think something and before the thought process is crystallized, the person types it and it is published in the internet. And as soon as it is published, he realizes, oh, maybe my thought process was wrong. Like that. So therefore, it is not, so such postings are not life transforming, but they are consciousness polluting postings. So therefore, one should be very careful. So this I learned from this devotee friend of mine. Very beautiful presentation. This is how how someone could be so conscious about raising children in a Krishna conscious way. I don't want my children to approach Google when they get a question about practice of Krishna consciousness. They should learn to approach devotees. So this is wonderful. I really felt very happy hearing it. So one should then perform loud chanting of the holy name after offering worship to Srimad Bhagavatam. So in this way, we come to the end of description of this fourth offense, and of course we will end our discussion about Namaparad here. So now we will move on to the fourth kind of anartha. So unwanted desires can also arise due to proper practice of bhakti. This we had an elaborate discussion, so I will not touch more on this. This essentially refers to Taranga Rangini. If you remember the 6 stages of Anishtita Bhajana Kriya, the 6th stage was Taranga Rangini. Taranga Rangini means due to proper practice of bhakti, the Vaishnavas may start praising, glorifying, may start giving us facilities, and if one gets carried away by that, then that is a serious obstacle in one's progress in spiritual life. So anarthas arising from practice of bhakti, they refer to material wealth, other facilities, worship, respect by others, comfortable position and fame, basically puja, labh and pratishtha. So we discussed, and this has a nature of choking one's growth of creeper of bhakti. It chokes up. Just like, if in your wash basin, if some hair or something gets choked up, then the water becomes stagnant. It won't go down. So then you will have to take that, that rubber thing. I forgot what it's called. And then you press it and it creates vacuum. It creates that pressure and it pushes that whatever is choking, that it removes that choke up, and then the water starts flowing. So similarly, the acharyas say that this desire for puja, labh, pratishtha, just basking in the glories that come due to one's practice of bhakti, it makes one's bhakti stagnant. So who is that rubber equipment which can create that pressure and force out that anartha of basking in one's self-glorification? So Srila Raghunath Das Goswami says in his Manas Siksha, Pratishtasha drishta shvapacha ramani me hridi natet. As long as this shvapacha ramani, as long as this dog-eating Chandala woman of desire for fame, Pratishta Asha, me hridi natet, as long as she is dancing within my heart, Katam sadhu prema sprishati. How can sadhu prema touch my heart? Sadhu prema means the prema that a sadhu has for Krishna, Krishna prema. So we can never access Krishna prema if our heart is consumed by the desire for fame. So the desire for fame will kick out sadhu prema. So sadhu prema, and the second meaning of sadhu prema is the love that a sadhu has towards you. You will not be able to access it if we are obsessed running after fame. And the third understanding is that the love that you should have towards the sadhu, sadhu prem, you can never develop proper love towards a sadhu as long as we are obsessed by ourselves becoming famous. So these 3 kinds of sadhu prem, we will be bereft of achieving these 3 types of sadhu prema if the Pratishta Asha is, that if that lady of Pratishta Asha is dancing in our heart. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, this lady does not dance alone. She has her own lover. And who is that lover? Deceit. So if we want to become famous, if that desire to become famous is consuming our heart, then whatever weakness we will have, we want to hide it from others. So along with the desire for fame comes deceitful nature, where we want to show off that we are a great personality, but actually deep inside we are suffering due to lot of weakness of heart. So therefore, this lady and her lover, the desire for fame along with deceitful nature, as long as they are dancing in our heart, we cannot access true love. So what is the solution? Sadatvam sevasva prabudayita samanta matulam. Oh my dear mind, you should always serve the incomparable beloved devotee commander of Krishna's army. Always keep yourself subservient to an elevated devotee and serve him. So as long as we are constantly engaged in menially serving an elevated devotee of the Lord, this desire for pratishtha can be subdued. So he says, yata tam nishkasya tvaritam ihatam veshayati saha. And that prabudayita samanta matulam, that exalted devotee commander in chief of Krishna's army, he will come and drive away these two personalities, the desire for fame and the deceitful nature. He will drive them away and establish sadhu prema in the heart of the devotee. So therefore, but this is a very difficult obstacle to overcome, especially in today's day and age, very difficult to overcome, because we can become overnight famous due to the presence of this internet. So therefore, we have to be more careful. The more there is a scope for becoming famous, the more we should put our head at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava and serve him, take guidance from him, render some menial service and protect our consciousness. Otherwise, if we allow ourselves to get carried away, then it becomes very difficult. So then we will have to settle down for the for this low pleasures of being praised by other. So people will praise you one day, and the other day the same people will criticize. That is the nature of this material world. So therefore, the only worthy thing that we should aspire for is to gain the loving relationship with the devotee. That is worth getting. Actually, the even great superstars, sports stars, initially that intoxication of fame is very powerful, but over a period of time, when they are little bit introspective, that desire for fame becomes actually very putrid, stale. Then one starts looking for true affection. They go back and search for spending time with their loved ones, those who love them irrespective of their fame. So if we can develop that kind of an affectionate relationship with devotees, then it is possible to overcome this desire for fame. So we have discussed this in detail, and as we saw, Hridaya Daurbalyam, one of the ways in which the weakness of heart manifests, one of the symptoms of a weak heart is this desire for fame, deceptive mentality, fault-finding mentality, envy towards others. These are all symptoms of a weak heart, a heart that is not sufficiently nourished by Vaishnava Preeti. So therefore, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that the solution for this is follow the fourth verse of Nectar of Instruction. dadati pratigrinnati guhyamakyati pruchati bhunkte bhojayate chaiva shadvidam preeti lakshanam. So one should be very diligent in applying oneself to these 6 exchanges with devotees, and through these 6 exchanges one should earn sadhu preeti, sadhu prema. That is the only worthy thing that is worth earning in this material world, is genuine affection of another devotee through a genuine service attitude. If we can earn this, all this fame and other things will pale into insignificance in comparison to genuine affection. Because genuine affection nourishes, fame intoxicates. An intoxicant cannot fill the belly, it can only intoxicate. But to fill the belly and give nourishment, one needs food. That food is sadhu prema. And one can gain that by having the 6 exchanges with devotees. So this we have already seen, so therefore I don't want to go into detail into discussion on this, because in Taranga Rangini we have discussed this in detail. And for those who cannot share things because they cannot afford it in the form of gifts or food, they can always share Krishna Katha, come together and nourish oneself, nourish each other by wonderful Krishna Katha. Parasparanu Katanam Pavanam Bhagavadyashah Mitoratir Mitotushtir Nirvritir Mita Atmanaha. So by coming together and discussing Krishna Katha, one can develop mitorati, mutual affection. Mitotushti, when that mitorati develops, when mutual affection develops, with your affectionate people, with people whose affection you really appreciate, you don't need anything else to entertain you. You are so entertained and jolly in the association of those persons. So when that mitorati develops with devotees, then apart from devotees association, you don't need anything else to satisfy you. And on top of that, nivrittir mita atmanaha. The person develops a positive confidence that yes, I can overcome my anarthas, because this devotee could overcome. If he could overcome, I could also overcome. He gets that confidence. So in this way, the association of devotees, association means affectionate association. So to live with devotees, we need not invest much. But to have affectionate relationships with devotees, or with anyone for that matter, unless we are willing to sacrifice our time, energy, resources and our heart, we cannot establish that relation. And that kind of a relationship is the only thing that is worth earning in this material world, and that will give access to all the other worthy things. Mahat sevam dwaram ahor vimuktais tamo dwaram yoshitam sangi sanga. Mahantaste samachitta prashanta vimanyavas suhridas sadavoye. It is mentioned in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Mahat sevam dwaram ahor vimuktais. Through Mahat Seva, we can attain, it opens the door of liberation for us. Tamodwaram Yoshitam Sangi Sangha. And the means of the door for hell is opened by Asat Sangha, including illicit association with the opposite sex. So therefore, the association of devotees is the only valuable jewel which can, it is like, that's why we call them Vancha Kalpataru. They are the ones who have the key to fulfilling all our desires. All our desires can be fulfilled in the association of devotees. But then one should endeavor to develop a loving relationship with them by sacrifice. So I will pause, we will pause discussing on this theme right now, because we have already discussed this in Taranga Rangini. Now let's move on to this next theme, of how do these anarthas get nullified. Do they get nullified overnight? One day I sleep and with so many anarthas in my heart, and the next day I wake up and the heart is completely light, free of all anarthas. No more lust, no more anger, no more greed, no more pride, no more illusion. Does it happen like that? Or how does this happen? So, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains in this section that the nullification happens in stages. As and when one progresses, it happens in stages. So, he says there are 5 stages of nullification of these anarthas. They are called as Ekadeshavartini, Bahudeshavartini, Prayiki, Purna and Atyantiki. This way 5 stages of nullification of these anarthas. What is Ekadeshavartini? Ekadeshavartini means when one or two unfavorable desires get destroyed, that is called as Ekadeshavartini. Like some of us before coming to Krishna Bhakti may have had attachment to, maybe we may have been meat eaters, or we may have had the habit of drinking, whatever. But having taken up to Bhakti, slowly we have given up those desires. Ekadeshavartini, 1 or 2 desires are gone. And for those who have practiced for little longer time, there is Bahudeshavartini. Many other desires, including attraction to tea and coffee, attraction to eating onion garlic, or to some people eating outside non-prasadam items, that desire also may have gone. So in this way, when one progresses little further, it leads to Bahudeshavartini. And then later Prayiki. Prayiki means almost gone. Most of the anarthas are almost gone. Some of the very deep rooted ones are still there, but others are almost gone. So this is Prayiki, almost complete. As Bhagavatam says, Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Prayeshu Abhadreshu means Prayiki nullification of the anarthas. Abhadra is anartha. Prayeshu is Prayiki. Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Ruttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So when these anarthas are gone, then one can steadily practice bhakti. Then the next is Purna. Purna means completely gone. And then there is Atyantiki. Atyantiki means gone to such an extent that it cannot return back also. No looking back. Atyantiki destruction. So in this way, 5 stages of nullification of anarthas is indicated here by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And he makes it more specific now. Okay. So he says the 4 kinds of anarthas, at what stage it is Ekadeshavartini, at what stage it is Bahudeshavartini, at what stage it is Prayiki, Purna and Atyantiki. If you look at this table, it becomes clear. The Dushkritotta anarthas and the Sukritotta anarthas, which are in the form of vasanas, due to a past sinful life or a past pious life. When we have these kind of unfavorable desires which act as an obstacle for our practice of bhakti, he says with bhajana kriya, slowly when we progress from Utsahamayi bhajana kriya to Taranga Rangini, slowly when anartha nivritti is happening, mostly Ekadeshavartini, Bahudeshavartini and Prayiki. So before we reach Nishta, almost all the unfavorable desires from our heart due to past sinful life and past pious life are all gone. When we reach Nishta, it is completely gone, which means when one reaches Nishta, he will no longer be troubled by any past bad habit. Can you imagine? No past bad habit will trouble a person who has reached the stage of Nishta. That is why the stage of Nishta is addressed as Tada rajastamo bhava kamalobhadayasche chetayeter anaviddam sthitam satve prasidati. So at the stage of Nishta, Tada rajastamo bhava, the influence of the rajogun and tamogun, which is present in the form of kama, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, etc. Kama lobhadayasche chetayeter anaviddam. It gets completely cleansed because the heart becomes cleansed of rajogun and tamogun. See, bhakti makes one transcendental to the three modes, but before transcending the three modes, the two lower modes are first transcended, and that happens at the stage of Nishta. So therefore, and all the sattva guni impressions are dovetailable in Krishna consciousness. So the sattva guni vasanas are dovetailed in Krishna's service, and the tamoguni and rajoguni vasanas are removed. So therefore, one is no longer troubled by his past bad habits when one reaches the stage of Nishta. No more lust attacks, no more greed attacks. When you are passing through a shopping mall, you don't just freeze and stare at so many things that have been displayed there. It doesn't touch you at all. That is what happens at the stage of Nishta. And then at the stage of Asakti, when one reaches Asakti, it is gone to such an extent that one cannot ever be again touched by these past bad habits at all. Atyantiki anartha nivritti happens of the dushkritotta and sukritotta anarthas. What about bhaktiyotta anarthas, which happen in the form of puja labh pratishta? He says, gradually with bhajana kriya, ekadeshavartini, bahudeshavartini and prayiki, it is gone. By the time we slowly push through Tarangarangini, it is not that only at the stage of Tarangarangini we experience this desire for fame. The desire for puja labh pratishta is there right from the beginning. But at the stage of Tarangarangini, we are purified of other gross anarthas and we start observing that yes, this desire for puja labh pratishta is actually affecting me. Just like when the house is extremely dirty, let's say after 1 year you are opening the house and it is completely dirty, filled with so many things and all that, you cannot see dust there because it is filled with so many big things. Once the big things are cleansed, then we will start seeing the smaller things. Once the smaller things are cleared, then we will start seeing some little bit of garbage lying around. And when that garbage is cleansed, then we will start seeing finer dust. So, when the bigger and bigger anarthas are cleansed, then we start seeing smaller and smaller, finer, more subtler anarthas. So, at the stage of Tarangarangini, it is not that only at the stage of Tarangarangini is affected by the desire for puja labh pratishta, but at the stage of Tarangarangini, because he is cleansed of the grosser and grosser anarthas, he starts seeing subtler and subtler anarthas. He actually starts seeing that yes, this is obstructing my progress in devotional service. Because no longer he is thinking, oh, lust is troubling me, greed is troubling me, because he has overcome all that. Because he has overcome all that, he is able to see the fine dust of this desire for name, fame, adoration, facilities like that. So therefore, when one progresses by performing bhajana kriya, before reaching Nishta, almost prayiki, almost for most part it is gone, and when he reaches Nishta, it is completely gone. Which means one who has reached Nishta can never be tempted with puja labh or pratishta. Not at all. And at the stage of ruchi, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti says, it is atyantiki gone, absolute destruction of this desire for puja labh pratishta. And then, finally, the most dangerous ones are aparadotta anarthas. So, aparadotta anarthas are gone only ekadeshavartini at the stage of bhajana kriya. At the stage of bhajana kriya, only one or two of the anarthas which are due to our past offenses, that is gone. When we reach Nishta, it is Bahudeshavartini, pervasive. Many of the anarthas which are due to offenses are gone. At the stage of Bhava, it is Prayiki. And at the stage of Prema, it is Purna, completely gone only at the stage of Prema. And when one becomes an associate of the Supreme Lord, when one eventually reaches the spiritual world, only then it is Atyantiki gone. Which means, till we reach the spiritual world, this anarthas due to offenses haunt us. Therefore, we have to be very careful in checking our attitude, in ensuring that we don't display any offensive attitude. So in this way, the destruction of these 4 types of anarthas in 5 different stages is described. So therefore, the point is, destruction of unwanted desires is gradual, both in us and in others. So we should be compassionate upon ourselves and not become so depressed that I am still suffering from all these different kinds of desires, material desires. It will go. Have trust in the process of bhakti. Slowly but steadily, it will go away. And when it comes to others, so compassion towards oneself and being non-judgmental towards others. So these are the 2 valuable take-home points that we can take home from this description given by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Anartha nivritti is a gradual process. So therefore, if you are troubled by anarthas, be little compassion, have some self-compassion, don't be so hard on yourself, practice bhakti nicely and allow bhakti to gradually cleanse the heart. It will take some time, but it will definitely go away. And when we see such unfavorable qualities in others, don't be judgmental. They are practicing bhakti. Bhakti will take care, Krishna will take care. It is none of our business. So, therefore, in this way, we can help, we can become non-judgmental when we see these anarthas in others, and we can become little self-compassionate when we see these anarthas in ourselves and not yield to depression like that. So, thus if one thinks, so because here it is mentioned that when one becomes a personal associate, then he can never offend anyone. One may say, oh, how can you say this? I have seen, Bhagavatam says that Chitraketu Maharaj, even after attaining the lotus feet of Lord Shankarshan, he got personal darshan of the Supreme Lord, still he offended Lord Shiva. You all know this story, that when Chitraketu Maharaj was flying on an airplane, he saw Lord Shiva sitting and giving a lecture to renunciants, the sannyasis, and Mother Parvati was sitting on his lap. And because the worshipable Lord of both Lord Shiva and Chitraketu Maharaj were Sankarshan, they were both like God brothers in one sense. On the transcendental platform. In the spiritual world, they were God brothers. So he had a very friendly relationship with Lord Shiva, and in a very joking way, he made a statement. Oh, how is it that, you are teaching the sannyasis while about renunciation, while you have your own wife sitting on your lap. So indirectly, he was indicating that how Lord Shiva is not at all agitated by the opposite sex at all. Because which person with even little bit of conscience will have the guts to speak to a group of renunciants about renunciation while having a lady sitting on his lap? Is it ever possible? So he was indirectly actually glorifying Lord Shiva. You are not an ordinary person. This was understood by Lord Shiva but misunderstood by Mother Parvati. So she cursed him. So therefore, so one should not say that, oh, this is not true. Chitraketu Maharaj performed an offense towards Lord Shiva. So here Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, in the case of Chitraketu, who had already attained the lotus feet of the Lord, his accidental Maha Aparat to Lord Shiva was apparent. Apparent means only from a superficial point of view it was an offense, but in reality it was not an offense. Because there was no ill effect. You say, how can you say there was no ill effect? He became a demon. True, he became a demon. But his love for the Lord, prema, was not in the least bit affected. You see the prayers offered by Vritrasur. He is an asura offering prayers. 4 prayers only he offers. Nanaka Prishtam, Nachaparameshtyam, Nasarvabhaumam, Narasadhipatyam, and so on. 4 beautiful prayers. The Acharyas say these 4 prayers are the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam. Of all the prayers, they are telling these 4 prayers offered by an asura. He has understood the essence of Bhagavatam. He had that love for Krishna. That love for Krishna was not in a least bit compromised despite getting the body of an asura. So how is that a fall down? It is not a fall down. Both as an associate of the Lord and assuming the form of a demon, his wealth of prema was still evident. And Indra was awestruck. Indra was totally ashamed seeing the love that Vritrasur had for the Supreme Lord. He said, am I a demigod or a demon? Is he a demon or what kind of a devotee he is? Indra was confused actually. Indra was humbled completely. When Vritrasur revealed his heart, it was like pure unadulterated gold standard. Whereas Indra's heart he found was completely adulterated with material desires. So therefore, he says that, no, one should not see this episode and think that actually Chitraketu committed an offense. He can never commit an offense. It was not an offense. It was misunderstood by Parvati, and overall it was completely orchestrated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He wanted to glorify his devotee. Therefore, as soon as Mother Parvati cursed Chitraketu Maharaj, and Chitraketu Maharaj so gracefully accepted that curse, Lord Shiva said, now you understand who a devotee of Lord Narayan is. Swarga apavarga narakeshu api tulyartha darshinaha. Narayana parasarve nakutaschana bibhyati. Swarga apavarga narakeshu api tulyartha darshina. You didn't really understand who is a worshipper of Lord Narayan. You underestimated them. For them, Swarga, Apavarga, Naraka. Whether it is Swarga or Naraka or the abode of the Supreme Lord, api tulyartha darshina. They don't see any difference. Because they are concerned only about glorifying the Supreme Lord. Wherever they are, they will glorify the Supreme Lord. Wherever they are, they will serve the Supreme Lord. You thought you have punished Chitraketu. You can never punish Chitraketu. Because whatever you do, you will be chanting the holy name. He will be worshipping the Supreme Lord. He will be remembering the Supreme Lord. Narayana parasarve nakutaschana bibhyati. They are not at all afraid of going to Swarga. Demoniac body, you think you can punish Chitraketu by giving him the body of a demon? See what he is doing in the body of a demon. He was offering the most wonderful prayers to glorify the Supreme Lord. That is a devotee. So therefore, one should not say that even after attaining the becoming a personal associate of the Supreme Lord, one can commit Vaishnava Aparadha. That is not at all possible. And Jaya Vijaya offended the 4 Kumaras. He said, oh, that is just from an external point of view. Internally, Vishwanath Chakravarti says, oh, this particular Purana says, I will tell you this Puranic story. You know what really happened? He says, once Jaya and Vijaya approached Lord Vishnu and they said, my dear Lord, we see that all your desires are fulfilled by your disciples, by your devotees here. But your one desire to have a good fight, that is not fulfilled, because all the devotees are so favorably inclined towards you that they won't fight with you. So therefore, how will your viryaras, your desire for some good fight, how will that be fulfilled? You cannot say, I will go to the material world, in the material world everyone hates me, so I will fight with them. It is true that people are inimical towards you, people of this material world, but people of this material world, what power do they have? But we, the residents of Vaikunta, you have given us your own power, Sarshti. So you have shared your power with us. So therefore, we cannot tolerate that this one desire is unfulfilled. It is like Mike Tyson, the world heavyweight boxing champion, if he is asked to fight with a lean, thin person who has never even seen a boxing gloves, Mike Tyson will just, breathe heavily and that person will fly away. And immediately Mike Tyson will get the championship belt. He will be least happy. He will say, you keep the championship belt, I don't want to fight. Because any good champion would want to get a good fight and then win that battle. So Krishna also. So they say that the people of this material world, they are inimical towards you, but they don't have any power to fight with you. So therefore, Jaya and Vijaya say, look, my dear Lord, you make us inimical towards you. Okay? Make us your enemies, send us to the material world, let us become demons, and then we will give you a good experience fighting. So therefore, but they said, but please do get us back to the spiritual world, because after fulfilling your desire, we want to again be reinstated back serving you, serving your lotus feet in Vaikuntha Dham. So in this way, so Krishna agrees, Lord Narayan agrees, and then he orchestrates this whole episode of the four Kumaras coming to the gate of Vaikuntha, and then Jaya and Vijaya stopping them, and all is orchestrated by Krishna in response to the desire of Jaya and Vijaya. Then they get cursed, then they first become Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, then they become Ravana and Kumbhakarna, and then they become Shishupal and Dantavakra, and then finally they go back. So in this way, even in this case, one should not say that Jaya and Vijaya, even though were personal associates of the Supreme Lord, they offended the four Kumaras. They didn't offend, it was all orchestrated by the Supreme Lord. Okay, so thus we have seen that the nullification of anarthas happens in stages. So we will further discuss the next theme tomorrow, where and we have a few other themes in this chapter of Madhurya Kadambini before we can move on to the fourth chapter, which discusses about Ruchi. So thank you very much for your patient listening, hoping for your association tomorrow also. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.